The moral dilemma that Frank has at this point is whether he should disobey not only his military directives, but any ethical obligation he has to uphold the human rights of Amir under the Geneva Convention. Frank knows that Amir is withholding information about a terrorist plot that will likely kill many American lives. Frank knows that Amir will not provide any information about the terrorism plot, and that the only way to extract that information from Amir is to use excessive force outside of the rules he has been given. Frank will use two philosophies to analyze this ethical dilemma: deontological theory and utilitarian theory. In the deontological perspective, the action to be taken by the soldier is evaluated for the respect of the individual rights and the obligation to respect those rights. The moral duty is to protect the prisoner from being tortured, a basic, inalienable right given to all human beings. It would be important in this perspective that the soldier is not acting out of a personal agenda, but only out of a duty to protect the rights of the prisoner. The prisoner should not be used as a means to an end. The individual being tortured as a means to stopping a terrorist attack would be utilizing the prisoner as a means to an end. Now, if Frank were to apply a deontological approach to this dilemma, he would ask 7 questions. Number 1, what is the act? The act in this case is using excessive force to extract information from the detainee. Question 2, what is the intention of the underlying act? The intention is to gain information that would likely save the lives of innocent American civilians. Question number 3, what duties are involved in this situation, and to whom or what? The duties are to uphold the moral obligations to the detainee, and also to uphold the moral obligation to protect the lives of innocent American civilians. Question 4. Do the duties conflict? Yes, there are conflicting duties to both the individual detainee and to society. Question 5. Will this act show respect for the human dignity of everyone involved? No, the act of torture will not respect the detainee's human dignity. Question 6. Will this act use any person as a means to an end? Yes, the act of torture will use the detainee as a means to save the lives of innocent Americans. And finally, question 7. Can I will this act onto everyone? While this act might be perceived by many to be the correct choice of action, since it is only sacrificing the dignity of a person in order to save the life of another person, it is an action that others may not agree is an appropriate action. Therefore, it is not an act that can be willed onto everyone. The second philosophy that Frank will use to analyze this ethical dilemma is the utilitarian theory. In the utilitarian perspective, the action to be taken by the soldier is evaluated for the duty to society, providing the greatest amount of good for the whole of society, instead of focusing on one individual's rights or needs. Morality is described as an attempt to bring about as much happiness as possible. If an action produces more beneficial effects than harmful effects, it is then considered an ethical action. According to this theory, the ends do justify the means. Therefore, if many American lives are saved at the expense of one person's displeasure, then it is a just and moral action. Now, if Frank were to apply a utilitarian approach to this dilemma, he would ask the following questions. Number 1, identify all the options. For this scenario between Frank and Amir, there are basically 2 options. A, for Frank to follow his directives and not to torture Amir, or B, for Frank to go against his directives and to torture Amir for the information that would save the lives of Americans. Question 2. Identify all those affected by the decision. Those likely to be affected by the decisions are Frank, Amir, the U.S. military, and the unknown American civilians who are at risk. Question 3. Describe the harms and benefits for all those affected under Option 1 and then Option 2. We will look at both options next. Under Option A, where Frank would torture Amir, the benefit to Frank would be that he would not sacrifice the human dignity of Amir, and he would not be at risk for being charged with a crime. However, he may suffer harm because he would feel that he could have saved American lives if he had just acted. For Amir, He would benefit from this action because he would not be tortured and his dignity would remain intact. Also, his terrorist group had succeeded their goal of killing innocent Americans. Under this option, there is no harm to Amir. The U.S. military would benefit from this action because there would be no bad publicity of torture. However, the military would suffer harm because it would not be seen as effective at stopping future terrorist attacks. And the innocent civilians may appear to benefit from knowing that their military would not violate human rights laws, but ultimately they would suffer from permanent harm because they would be killed by the terrorist attack. Under option B, where Frank would torture Amir, Frank would suffer harm because he could be convicted of a criminal offense, and he could be dishonorably discharged from the military. However, Frank would benefit from knowing that he saved the lives of many innocent American civilians. As for Amir, he would suffer harm because he would be tortured, his human dignity and rights would be violated, and his terrorist organization would fail at their plot. Under option B, there is no benefit for Amir. The U.S. military would suffer harm from this action because it would be seen by the American public and as the world as barbaric, gaining a negative reputation. It would benefit because it would be seen as an effective force at stopping future terrorist attacks. And the innocent civilians would benefit from this action because their lives would be saved. Under this option, there is no harms to the civilians. So, if Frank were to apply the utilitarian approach to this dilemma, we would ask question 4. Choose the option that produces the most benefits for the most of those affected by the decision after calculating the difference. After applying utilitarian theories to this torture scenario, option A, to not torture, is determined to produce a moderate amount of benefits to all parties. However, there is severe harm to the innocent civilians. Under option B, to torture, it's determined to produce a moderate amount of harm to Frank and to the reputation of the U.S. military by the world. However, the benefit of stopping the killing of many innocent civilians cannot be overlooked. Therefore, by application of utilitarian theories, torturing Amir would provide the greatest amount of benefits for the most of those affected. Now an ethical decision will be made. After considering both deontological and utilitarian philosophies, Frank has concluded that while the human rights and dignity of the prisoner are important and should be upheld whenever feasible, he cannot morally justify the loss of multiple innocent human lives over the dignity of one person. Frank has concluded that the most ethical option in this scenario is the utilitarian theory, where the greatest amount of good for the whole of society is of higher importance than the rights or needs of an individual. Frank has decided that the sacrifice of Amir's human dignity is of lesser importance than the lives of many Americans. Therefore, Frank will use whatever force is necessary to protect the lives of those Americans. Now let's watch.
So you won't tell me what you know? No, I will not tell you. But you are telling me that there will be an event that will take the lives of innocent Americans, even more than those who died in Madrid. Yes, most certainly there will be. You shall see. So you expect me to refrain from doing anything to you beyond the authority I have, simply to protect your rights and dignity, even though you are willing to kill many innocent Americans at the first opportunity. Yes, that is the way you Americans work. You see, your people are too weak to set aside your own principles in order to complete your goals. My people, we are willing to do whatever is necessary to accomplish our goals. So you will not hurt me in order to protect your principles, and Americans will die. Not if I have anything to say about it.